Yeah, I gotta go back and grab something from the pilot because I realized after we finished taping that one of my favorite lines and moments in the pilot that Ted got to say, I forgot to mention. And it's when he's talking to Yasmin and he says, it's not like I sit around all day fantasizing about my wedding. And then he goes into this whole very specific fantasy about his wedding, which he ends with, band, no DJ. People will dance. I'm not going to worry about it. Right. And I loved the phrase, people will dance. Like as a notion of like, I'm not going to worry about it. It became shorthand in my life. The woman that I was seeing when I got How I Met Your Mother, who worked on the audition sides with me, she was Eastern European, and she found that also so charming. And our mantra was, and she would say it in this accent that was adorable to me, people will dance, I'm not going to worry about it. You know, like it'll take care of itself. Like, and I named my corporation, People Will Dance. Like it really became this mantra of, remember when I said all people want to be told is it's going to be okay?
Yes.
For me, the phrase people will dance is that. It's still that in my head. Like people will dance. Like people are going to have a good time. You don't have to micromanage every last bit of life or this evening or whatever. So that to me, I suppose if I was getting a phrase from How I Met Your Mother tattooed, I don't have any tattoos, but people from the world, all over the world get How I Met Your Mother tattoos. I've seen a lot of How I Met Your Mother tattoos. If I were getting one, it would probably be People Will Dance. Hey, welcome to a very special bonus episode of How We Made Your Mother. This is an episode we call General Questions. General Questions. I'm Josh Radnor. I am here with, who am I here with?
You're here with Craig Thomas.
Craig Thomas, the co-creator of How I Met Your Mother, and our friend Alek Lev. And we're going to burn through some reader mail, hearkening back to Carter and Craig's origins of doing the Letterman reader mail.
We should back it up for a second, though, right? And say that the running joke on How I Met Your Mother doesn't start till season 2. But whenever anybody says, I have a general question or I have a major problem, everyone salutes and says general question, major problem.
Major problem,
that's
general questions. Yeah.
That is the
and this
the
came from
origin.
you, Alek. Is this right?
This is my proudest moment in life was when I turned on the TV one Monday night and there was this stupid saluting thing that I annoyed everyone with in college, but they all picked it up. Craig, so
Alek and I went to college together, lived together in college. He brainwashed me into doing this.
There is something sticky social contagion about the joke. For some reason, even if you've grown the first time you hear it, once you get it in your head. So it's major, general, and what else?
Oh, private. You could have a private meeting.
Private conversation. Private conversation.
Yeah, private conversation. You could take it very far. We'll get into that as the we don't want to give it all away right here. But yes,
it is a season 2 bit on the show. Alek, did I ask you permission to steal this bit, or was this one of the many times I just stole things like a fucking dick?
No, but this was truly the proudest, and I will say that
was it a surprise? Be honest, was it a surprise you turned on the TV and it was just on? I guess I probably chose to surprise you because I knew you would like it.
It absolutely was, and I will say that I have a very good friend who told me that she used to do this with her friend, 10 years ago, 15 years ago from the show, do it all the time. And I was
my God.
That's all coming in a circle. But speaking of bringing in a circle and
I'm just happy that you're finally going to get credit for this, Alek. This is something, this has been a long time coming.
This is why I'm doing this podcast, my friends.
Oh my God, it's really true.
To show how long a tale and amazing a story this is, Josh, you got an incredible letter.
I got an unbelievable note. I won't say the names unless they authorize it, because they didn't really write this for us to share on the podcast. But it's so incredible, we have to share it.
And fitting with me stealing it from Alek, we'll now steal this question from these kind-hearted viewers.
This is from a couple who said that, this is the husband writing me, that his wife was 38 weeks pregnant with their daughter. And the wife had several days of early labor and pain before they finally admitted her to the hospital. And then she had over 30 hours of labor in the hospital, which you guys have had wives who've given birth. That's a long time, right?
That's a long run, man.
30 hours of labor.
Respect is the word.
With her last pushes, the nurses said, push. you're having a major contraction. And through all the pain and pushing, my wife looks at me and salutes to major contraction.
It's just the best. It's just the best story there is.
It's an unbelievable story.
It's so good. It's so good.
So we thank you to the mighty, marvelous couple out there who did How I Met Your Mother inside joke at the moment of
pushing
birth.
a baby out. An inside joke is the baby came out. What a major contraction. Major respect to this amazing woman and to whatever lucky gentleman got to marry her and have a child with her. That's unbelievable.
That's how you know.
Did you ever know?
That's how you know this marriage is going to last.
Truly. I have no doubt about that marriage. And Alek, did high school you that began this joke that presumably everyone hated you for?
Sure.
Could you ever have imagined this would boomerang back around to us, and like that this could possibly does it blow your mind?
No, that was the point. That was the point the whole time.
You thought it would infect
game.
the world and this was the long time.
And it was college. I held off until I met you. I didn't annoy them in high school yet. I thought it was cool to bust it out freshman year in college. All right. So, we only announced the show, a little time bending here. We announced the show in our lives not that long ago and have been flooded not only with stories, but also literally a minute before we recorded our episode about the pilot, I went on to Instagram and I said, hey, does anyone have any questions? And by the time the hour was done of recording, I had 350 of them, and I got to precisely almost 0 because Josh and Craig just had so much to say about the pilot. So we thought we'd hold it off and just do a rapid fire, get some of the fan questions out here. Some of these you will have answered before, and a lot of these are one question represents 10 questions that were of the same topic. So let's just dive in. So Alice 2388 asks Josh, how much do you relate to Ted in real life? I'll say that's a big question. It's what we're going to be talking about through the whole series. So I'm going to bend it a little bit if that's okay. In our last episode, you said you sort of gave grace to your younger Josh self. You had some advice for your younger Josh self who was feeling certain things. What would older Ted have to say to younger Ted in the pilot? He was a very intense guy.
Yeah.
What can you give him?
Well, I mean, it's more like, acting is so strange. I always think about what my acting teacher at NYU said, Ron Van Loo. He said, a character is a 50% meeting of you and the character. So I lend 50% of the kind of DNA, and the character, as Craig and Carter wrote the character, is also that other 50%. So you're kind of like meeting this other thing to form this thing that looks like a dimensional real person. So I'm loath to kind of act like Ted. I don't know when people say like, oh, do it like Ted. I'm like, I don't know. James Lipton asked us to do things in character. I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Like without the words from the script, like there is nothing. There's no character. But right. I am underneath the skin of him, or I was for a long time. I think, if my younger self had told a woman that he was wildly attracted to, that he loved her on the first date and kind of blew it, and I knew what I know now, I would say, humiliation is part of life. Like it's almost like initiatory. Like you get humiliated. And I was listening to this guy, Scott Galloway, who's a really interesting thinker. And he's talking about men, the kind of crisis of manhood. And he said, when men are just on their screens alone, they don't know how to take big swings out in the world. They need to go out and learn to be humiliated. Now, I learned to be humiliated, honestly, somewhat by, women, but not as much. Here's what taught me humiliation was being a young actor.
Yeah.
Going in role after role, sometimes nailing it, not getting the job, sometimes getting the job, sometimes blowing it, being unprepared or just getting too nervous. Like I really had to learn how to be humiliated and pick myself back up and keep going. And I think it's one of the great qualities of Ted, which I hope I share, is this ability to get knocked down. And he sometimes literally, like he got punched a lot in the show. Like he sometimes literally gets punched down and he gets back up. So I think it's more like if someone's, if a younger person says, I got humiliated, as an older mentor figure, I think you say, good.
Yeah.
This is what you need.
Advice.
You need to be humiliated. You need to take swings. You need to put yourself out there, and you need to get need to get a thicker skin. Need to get immune to the kind of criticism and humiliation, and just keep going. So I would just tell him to pick himself up, and it's all gonna be all right. Ultimately, I think all anyone wants to hear is it's gonna be okay.
Yes.
Like that's all anyone wants to hear ever.
Yeah.
Always, every day.
It's the most evergreen piece of like pep talk advice you could give.
And I wrote you this little ditty to sing to you in New York City.
Greg, the Dodger Mensch asks a question you must have gotten a lot back in the day, but let's cover it officially now. Why did you cast Bob Saget as the old Ted, which we could split that into two questions. Why was there an old Ted?
Yeah.
Period. And why Bob Saget?
This is my question.
The great Bob Saget, by the way. Let's just
the great Bob Saget, and we will get to the episode where the whole episode is about how much we love Bob Saget and how much we miss Bob Saget and how lucky we were to work with him. I'm so glad that we did it. I will say that when we were first writing it, we thought the actor who played Ted would do the voiceover. And in fact, I don't believe it was our idea to have an older person do the role. I think CBS, an older scheming network at the time, we were the youngest show on that network for all 9 years that we were on that network, I believe. I think that's true. I think the executives there said, because I think we had the idea, we considered a different actor doing that voice, but I think we were leaning more towards Josh would do it. And I think I have to give credit to CBS and the studio for saying, like, there will be something here on CBS to having a trusted voice of an actor in his 50s who we've all grown up with. America's Funniest Home Videos, Full House. He feels like your dad. He feels like this trusted part. He's been in your living room before, and it will help the viewers that are watching CBS feel connected to the show in a way that maybe they wouldn't. But that was sort of the practical part. The creative part, and I think this was more important, was this idea that future you is kind of a different guy, right? The Ted in 2005 and the Ted in 2030, they're different people. Just like Josh and I are different people from 2005 and now. And having Bob do that role, he brought this kind of wisdom and warmth and to go back to Josh's question, ability to look back on having been humiliated with wit, humor, acceptance, grace. Like, he had that in his voice. He was a stand-up comedian, Bob Saget. He went up and bombed in front of audiences. He killed in front of audiences. You hear all his history in his voice. He's a fantastic actor, too. He took the role really seriously. He really loved Josh. He tried to get to know Josh and connect with Josh. So he was future Ted. He would come hang out on the set. He didn't have to do that. When he'd come do voiceovers, he'd come say hi because he wanted to feel what the show was. And that sort of connection between these two Teds, but who were the same guy, but were different guys, the way we all are, and 30, 25 years apart, I think it became such an asset to the show, and I can't claim credit for it. In fact, we may have had to be. I think we got convinced of it through the process, and we were wrong to be resistant.
I had a couple moments where I was like, man, I wish I was doing the voice, but I ended up loving Bob so much that I was so happy that there was this introduction and that we got to be friends all these years. But also, it was fun to watch Bob. He became a fan of the show.
Huge fan.
Because he would watch it in the sound booth, and he loved the show. He was really, he loved it. And I ultimately think it was the right move. And I'm so glad that I knew him. And also, he and I had some real deep talks about being overly associated with a show, because he had that with Full House. Yeah. So he offered me some real wisdom and more than anything, just the wisdom to keep going.
No, but I mean, think about it. Bob was a genius at complicating and diversifying his image past Full House. He really embraced the idea of, like, I'm going to show you some other moves. I'm going to show you some other. I wish I was more really comfortable in my own skin. Yeah.
I wish I was more comfortable working blue. It's not my it's not my thing.
But it only worked with him because you knew he was a mensch. You knew he was all heart underneath it. It came across.
Yeah, there was a perpetual wink in it. Yeah.
Absolutely. It was funny.
No malice.
No, zero malice, all love.
Yeah.
Dr. Marie 15 again has a big question. But Josh, can you think of a time during the pilot or in those early days, weeks when you felt like, oh, this group is clicking, this cast?
Well, Neil and I had done a play together, like a really intense John Robin Bates play, like months before. So I knew we worked well together. I mean, I think it was pretty immediate. I knew from the testing audition situation that Kobe and I, had a real fizz together. And then when we got the whole gang together, I remember writers telling me that they all recognized that when the five of us were around that table was when the show felt so alive to them. So they were, and Craig, you can back me up on this, but like trying to write more for the five people, the gang of five. I think I remember the champagne night, and maybe it was just because I was a little buzzed, but I definitely felt like we made something really great. And I have a quiet, good feeling about this because I had everything happen to me in the world of making television pilots except getting a hit show. I got fired from my first one. The second one got canceled after 6 episodes. The third one just didn't get picked up by the network. But I thought if anyone's going to go, I think it's going to be this one. I had that real strong feeling.
We have a question here from our co-producer, Doug's wife, Tali. So great friend of the show. Tali does work blue. Tali says, how the fuck did they shoot all the future Ted scenes with the kids before they shot the rest of the show? Craig?
Well, we didn't shoot it all before, but we definitely got ahead of it. And we definitely, in season 2 is when we kind of grabbed all the future looking stuff that pertained to the very ending. And we grabbed other stuff that we thought could slide in here or there, like just reactions. And it was kind of funny. We just tried to imagine some reactions. And we had some ideas that we thought would apply to future episode ideas. But mostly we shot that ending piece with them, right? Because they were going to, if the show was a hit in 1 year, they were going to be too old. And that's what happened. And so we just grabbed it. Looking back, it was a real like Babe Ruth call your shot baller move to be like, clear the set. We need these 2 child actors, and they're going to sign non-disclosure forms, which they did. Wow. And we had 1 cameraman, we had 1 sound person who also signed those forms, and everybody else in the set. Set's usually a pretty crowded place. We cleared them out. I think we did it at the beginning of a day or an end of a day, and nobody else, me and Carter, Pam, Susie, those 2 actors, David and Lindsay, the kids. And that was it. And so we just thought we have to do this. And if we, however many years pass, we'll always have shot this. We'll never regret having grabbed it. There's no way to grab it 8-9 years from now, so we're going to get it now. So we just, it was an example of using the format of the show to really think forward and think about the future. The show is about the future. And so I think our brains were just in that mode. And so we said, let's do it. Let's grab it. We had the idea. Let's grab it.
We have a lot of questions about the order in which scenes were shot. And I feel like at another time, what might be good to go through just for fans who don't really know the way TV is put together is kind of, let's talk about how the show happens from Monday through Friday. So I feel like let's put a pin in that so people see that. Josh, do you remember after Champagne Moment, after the show was edited, do you remember just watching the pilot for the first time and what your reaction was? Craig, same question to you afterwards.
Yeah, I can't remember the first time I saw it. I can't remember if I got a link. I think that Pam maybe invited us as a cast to watch it. Do you remember, Craig? Do you remember showing it?
I was going to say, I don't know if you got a link. You might have got a fucking VHS tape.
Oh yeah, I think I got a CD. I don't know. I don't remember, but I remember
DVD.
Yeah. And then I ended up watching it a bunch of times with an audience because we watched it with the audience to get the laughter. I think I saw it a bunch. I've seen the pilot probably more than any other episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And Craig, you obviously saw it all through the editing
It's different
process.
For me because we edited the hell out of it. It wasn't like 8 minutes up. It was like supposed to be 22 minutes. It was 31 or whatever it was. And we spent weeks whittling it, editing it down. The weirdest part was watching a focus group test audience watch it with their dials of like and don't like. And these dials that are all averaged together of this room full of people watching it in real time. You see the lines going up and down of male approval or disapproval and female approval or disapproval. I think one's blue and one's pink in stereotypical fashion. And it's like, ooh, women like that moment. Men did not. And people, it's just so weird. So I watched the pilot every way you could possibly watch the pilot, and it was super weird, some of them. But then when we had it locked or almost locked and showed it to a live audience and recorded their laughs and their responses, which was what aired in the show for that one, that was fantastic because people, you knew it worked. You knew it worked. I knew it worked before that because everybody that came into the edit room and watched it, every moment that had to work worked. So I felt confident. But the best moment was finally getting to show it to an audience full of humans and then we're not assessing it in any way. They were watching it and reacting naturally.
How much, Craig, at the time, and this might have changed over the course as the show became more successful and you more confident in this new crazy job that you had, how much of these other voices, whether it's audience reaction or test audience reaction or executives, how much is actually influencing your writing of the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good note is a good note. I think we had some very smart executives from both the studio and the network, and who were really believed in the show and supported it. And we, it took some time sometimes for people for them to get on board with sort of how serialized the show was and sort of emotional and stuff like that. But for the most part, they just wanted what was best for the show. And it was actually very helpful because we didn't shoot it in front of a live studio audience. So those responses meant something. If we got notes about confusion or boredom or something was slow and just it came from that human, like an executive is saying to me, I felt confused here, or this felt really rushed to me. That's good. That's really useful. That's a human reaction. They felt that in their gut and they told us. The other thing that was really useful, and I think Carter pointed this out in his episode, the crew reacted when we'd perform these scenes. The actors would perform these scenes, and the crew wouldn't have read every line of every script or like the new rewrite or whatever that came out the night before we shot, and they'd react honestly to stuff. They'd really laugh at, but only things once, and go cricket silence, and then and it was only that first time. So you had to kind of aggregate responses. You're getting some responses from different places, and you sort of aggregate them. And especially if you see link ups, and you're like, oh, that didn't work in 3 different settings now. It didn't work at the table read. The crew didn't laugh, et cetera, et cetera. And you sort of had to take the hit and go, okay, let's take this as a sign. We may need to change it. But some stuff you got to believe in, even if it doesn't play on its feet in front of the crew. You say, this is a quiet moment. This will work in the edit room. This is a different kind of moment. And so it's a case by case.
And Josh, I assume you're basically at this point insulated from the larger, louder voices about the show should be more of this, the stuff that Craig and Carter are hearing. For you in your process early on, can you talk a little bit about what is affecting you? Because unlike a play, right, where you're working on this one character and it's got to be contained within this 2 hours, you do have it somewhere in your head of like, the choices that I'm making for this character could live for years, could live, as it turns out, for a decade. What's happening as you're developing that early on, obviously with the scripts that you're being handed?
Yeah, I mean, I think any sort of notes from the studio or network, I was super insulated from that on the pilot at the very least. Then you end up getting to know the studio and network executives, and they're there every week, and you become really friendly with them. It's not, they never felt like the enemy was walking onto stage, But I was very interested in process and in writing. So I remember I was probably alone, among the cast members, and Craig can tell me if I'm wrong, I was probably the most curious about process. I was probably the one who asked the most about what was coming up and what you guys were working on and what you were struggling with. And like, I had an endless appetite for those kinds of questions. Some of it was like a little bit like what's coming down the pike. Like I wanted to, you become a fan of the show too. I was like, I want to know what happens to this guy that I'm playing. Yeah. I still was a relative newcomer to the world of filmed entertainment. I had done so much theater since I was 15. And theater, the mercy of theater and somewhat of the sadness of theater is it's ephemeral. It goes away. You do it and then you have to keep doing it. It's much more like a restaurant where you have to keep making the food every night, Yeah. And you don't have to be haunted by the bad night's performance or even get to celebrate that much the good night's performance. It just, it evanesces. Is that the word? It just goes away.
Right.
And with filmed entertainment, I found it took me years to become less self-conscious and to not think about the kind of like museum quality of it, that it would last forever. And I always wanted another take if one was available, because I just wanted another whack at the thing. But it wasn't until I directed my own movies, and I was in both the movies I directed, where I had to edit myself. And I learned so much. I learned, it was weird. Something happened to me where I was like, I know what I look like now. You know, when you're a kid and you hear your voice on tape for the first time and you're like horrified, and you're like, that can't be what I sound like, right? You go through that a little bit when you see yourself on camera, like Craig and Carter as the firemen or the EMT guys. We'll get to that episode. But that
still haunts me.
There was this feeling once I edited myself, I was like, I didn't think I looked particularly good or bad. I just knew what I looked like, and I had a kind of ruthless acceptance of it. And since I've done that, I have a much easier time watching myself on screen. It still pops up where you're like, ugh, I don't know, or I wish they would have chosen a different take or something. But it's hard. It's hard. I think that people don't understand how much self-consciousness is induced by acting on screen. And when I see people, you know, like Lizzie Olsen, who was in my second movie, Liberal Arts, like she's just to the manner born. I think Kobe was like this too. Like they're just comfortable being photographed and, you know, fussed over in a way that I, coming from the theater, and I don't know, just my general kind of level of self-consciousness back in those days, I had a harder time relaxing. I feel like I know how to act on in front of the camera in a totally different way than I did 20 years ago.
All right, we have two questions representing many who asked the same. Let's do it. PJ Chandra 612 says, what was the inspiration behind a blue French horn?
I mean, I think that came from, I remember us wanting to, by the way, it's right over Josh's shoulder right there. I don't think
This
we've
is the
even
next
talked about
question
that on camera here in our little, if anyone's YouTubing us. It's fantastic. It makes me very happy. Josh has a lovely fire. I can't tell if you have the fire today. You do? There's the fire. It's always a lovely fire. It's a winter, and there's the blue French horn. It's very appealing. It came from the idea of that Carter and I we knew we wanted Ted to have to bring something in this sort of very elemental storytelling way. Like he's got to bring the heroine a gift to gain entry into her lair. You know what I mean? Like there was just this sort of almost like Greek mythological, like he must get a gift, and that will gain him access into her world. A boon. Yeah, it really was. It feels very like Joseph Campbell mythology, kind of like just like let's boil it down to the hero needs to do this to sort of earn his way. And then it was like, let's think of something memorable that could hang on a wall. And that was when we got to that.
You also get the feeling Ted was not into thieving that much. Like he doesn't seem like he was a guy who stole a lot of things off a wall from restaurants.
I have these moments a lot, but I'm like, we should have talked about that. Like, Ted, have you ever stolen anything before? That could have been a whole episode. Like times the whole gang stole something. Damn it. But yeah, that would have been a new thing for Ted. I believe in my heart. That was his first theft, I think. And the idea that he had to run in and sort of like going back to Josh's earlier comment about sort of humiliating yourself in order to sort of move forward in the game. He had to run and jump onto a couple's dinner table, put his knee in like the entrees and grab this thing off the wall over this couple. It's sort of a humiliating, insane thing to do, but it got him to the next level of the rom-com video game to go meet the boss.
I do remember shooting that and enjoying it. It was so quick.
It was fun.
And it was almost like doing your own stunt. Like it was a little like there was some athleticism to it. You know, it was really fun.
I was surprised rewatching it. I was like, oh, he really had to climb up on a table to get that thing. It was like,
that was really me climbing up on that table.
It was actually all his own stunts there.
Ivana does ask, did any of you keep the blue French horn? And remember, this is audio. This is an audio format, Josh. So please talk us through this.
Yeah, it's just over my right shoulder. We were just kind of asked by the props department and by Carter and Craig, like, if you could take one thing. And I asked for the blue French horn. And I mean, it was so associated with Ted. I don't think there was a lot of competition for you know, I don't think Carl the Bartender was like, give me that. So so I asked for the horn, and it's traveled with me. I'm now I now live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Downtown Albuquerque.
But it's been with me for a number of years. Yeah.
It makes me so happy every time we do this podcast to see it over Josh's right shoulder. It makes me every time I sort of forget that it's there, and then it's there, and it's like it's delightful. So,
by the way, you just mentioned the bartender. Do you guys know Joe? Right? Do you guys know his story of how he wound up on 9 seasons of the show? Do you know how it started?
Well, I mean, I do because I was there. Do you mean
you were there? Can you tell the story?
He was going to be a cop that appeared in a whole sequence that got axed from the show. I think we cut it. I'm not sure we even. I think we didn't even. Did we shoot it? God, Alek, we didn't shoot it.
He showed up.
We cast him. He showed up. He right. I think production forgot to call him and tell him it was cut.
Yes,
that was it, right?
And he got in his costume. Someone put a costume on him of a cop.
Yeah, he showed up, and that's a question that will haunt me. Did wardrobe know it was cut, but was like, let's put him in the cop outfit. We don't want to be the one to tell him. So that question's.
So wait, he shows up to set in a cop outfit, and you say, "Sorry, this has been cut. And you can get behind the bar and be the bartender."
That's it. Yeah, that was it. We felt it because we were still casting the bartender role, and we liked him, and we had cast him, and then cut this thing at the last minute about a cop. It was like a cop that was going to come when they were all sitting out in the taxi cab outside of Robin's apartment. There was a whole little bit with a cop, and don't even ask me verbatim what it is because I'm kind of blanking on what it really was. We cut it, and we felt so bad that the message never got to him somehow, and we said, you were great. Let's make you Carl the Bartender, and then he appeared for 9 years on the show.
Unbelievable.
So you
Joe,
never know.
Shout out to Joe, though. Joe was awesome.
Shout out to Joe. Joe was great.
He was always so much fun to have on set. He was so chill.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot in the pilot, you have that moment. He glares at me because Yasmin is his girlfriend.
I forgot that moment too. I forgot that. I forgot that she was Carl's girlfriend for a second. Yeah. That was like one of those little. I mostly had that verbatim, that pilot in my brain, but it's like, right, she's dating Carl, and he has a good, intimidating look at Ted. Like, right, Carl.
It's the most menacing Carl ever got.
Yeah. He was good. He had a presence.
He was great.
Go, Joe. Yeah. And sorry about the cop thing, Joe, but I guess it worked out way better.
We have so many questions and so little time. Craig, something you and I have, bonded over for all of our many, many decades together. But it is Douglas asks, what books, TV shows, or stories in general help guide how to tell the first episode? I guess bigger question, what are your biggest writing comedy influences?
I mean, Carter would have a certain set of answers that would be very important to this too. I won't attempt to speak for him, but so many of our answers were overlaps. This is one. Cheers. I think we wanted to do a show that had a bar in it. You wanted to hang out with these people at the bar, and we wanted the bar to be super inviting and warm and amazing. And we just took that from Cheers. But we also love Quentin Tarantino. And we love slicing and dicing narratives and storytelling and finding these nonlinear, crazy ways to tell stories. So I'd say Quentin Tarantino plus Cheers equals How I Met Your Mother with some When Harry Met Sally thrown in.
I think you guys told me on the pilot that you had pitched Ted as Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything meets George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. Were those the two comps that you gave?
Absolutely. Big time. And with a special emphasis on George Bailey, I think, because think about the planning aspect. I'm going to plan my feature. This is what the feature is going to be. I've got it all mapped out. I mean, in some ways, it's an actionable ripoff. We really took a lot from George Bailey, main character of It's a Wonderful Life for you kids playing along in the home game. He's this big dreamer who thinks he's going to plan everything out, and life proves otherwise. And life also proves that there's a richness to be found when it doesn't all go according to plan. I'd say that was a big spiritual forebearer of Ted. But Lloyd Dobler, big time. I mean, so much so with Lloyd Dobler that when you walked in the door and had a little Cusackian quality to you, Josh, at first, so you're not to say you seemed like John, you were your own man, but it definitely helped. There was kind of a wit and an intelligence in your eyes that felt like a young John Cusack.
Oh no! At that time in my life, if someone called me Cusackian, I would take it as a big compliment.
You'd embrace it. Okay, yeah, meant as a big compliment.
My last question on paper here is from Chris Ram asks, "Will you be filming this podcast?" So. Here we are. We're very excited. If you are listening to this right now, just know that this is also on YouTube. You can check it out. There's so many questions about this pilot. There's 300 more here on Instagram and everywhere. Is there anything left? What else should we talk about the pilot because we're moving on to episode 2.
I would just say that one thing that struck me rewatching the pilot was the sense memory of the challenge of having to have Robin meet the rest of the gang. Robin, Kobe Smulders, only has scenes with Josh in the pilot. She never interacts with anybody else. And I remember that feeling at the end of the pilot, like, we better have a good episode 2 that shows how she kind of works her way into this group and befriends this group, because that's a whole other sale we have to make of like, she's the fifth banana. She's the fifth part of this 5-part puzzle. And we had to sort of integrate her and show how everybody else kind of fell in love with her too. And I had that feeling in my body. I sort of re-experienced it of like, we got to somehow thread the needle on that. We got to make the sale. Like, I remember feeling that way when we had to write episode 2 and 3, and that we're sort of like showing her becoming part of that group. And yeah, it was just fun to remember that challenge. And we'll rewatch and talk about if we did it. I think we did. I think we pulled it off.
I have 2 things. One is, if you watch the pilot of How I Met Your Mother, the DNA for the entire show is in the pilot.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely, the entire kind of structure and essence and surprise switcheroo kind of thing that they did so well. It's in there. It's like the ragu sauce or whatever. It's like, it's in there. Will people understand that? You can cut that if they don't. The other thing I wanted to say, this is just a funny thing that my wife said this morning. She was like, she knew someone who lived on the Upper West Side, and he had a dog named Teddy, and everyone called him the dog Teddy Westside. And I love, as one of Ted's, he had so many nicknames. Teddy Westside's a great nickname, I thought. But it was also self-proclaimed, right? He called himself Teddy Westside.
I think he was trying to get
everyone else on board. They weren't on board. Yeah. But she said, so where'd they live? And I said, they lived on the Upper West Side, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And she said, but Robin lives in Brooklyn. And I said, yeah. And she said, because Robin's cool. Because like Jordana, she grew up in Manhattan, but she lives in Brooklyn, and she just can't stand going into Manhattan. She loves Brooklyn. But she said, how was she hanging out on this bar on the Upper West Side so much if she lived in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
That makes no
it's a
sense.
shitty commute.
She would never.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Here's what I rationalized. I think her TV station is close by.
Yeah, let's say that. TV station's in Midtown somewhere, so she's like, why not?
Yeah, or even in like
up.
the West 60s, like where
yeah,
ABC
it's the West 60s, like that sort of like CBS building, like West 50s, 60s, like that whole.
So then she just pops up a couple, like 10 or 15 blocks and hangs out with her friend. But also, she's out so late, and she has to get up at like 3:30 in the morning to do the early.
Just to take like an hour and a half.
These are the kind of threads we'll be pulling. That'll be.
Yeah, at some point she moves, but it's true. For a while, she had a real shit commute.
I am guilty. Please acquit me. All sins are forgiven in New York City.
How We Made Your Mother is hosted and executive produced by Josh Radnor and Craig Thomas. The show is produced by me, Alek Lev, and our co-producer is Doug Matica. Our audio producer and mixer is Alex Reeves at Point of Blue Studios. Artwork by John Morrow. Please follow, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. It really does help the show. Our theme song is NYC by our own Josh Radnor. Special thanks to Lola Kennedy and Elliot Connors. Visit howwemadeyourmother.com to sign up for our Substack mailing list and for links to our social media. You can also click on the contact page to send us an email or a voice message. Your stories and questions are an important part of the show. Subscribe to Josh Radnor's newsletters on Substack. Read Craig Thomas's published prose at craigthomaswriter.com. And you can subscribe to my Dead Fathers Society, also on Substack. To learn about how you make a difference, this show's ongoing campaign to raise money for congenital heart disease research, check out the Make a Difference tab at the top of our website. This episode was made possible by the support of Backyard Ventures, marketing provided by Tink Media. People will, in fact, dance.
The real question, it just hit me. Am I in love with you, or just New York City?